welcome to the Roll20 Community Roundtable. I am here with managing partner and co-founder Nolan T. Jones, with our licensing manager, Dean Bigbee, and with our product director, Kenton Hansen.
Hey there.
And I'm Soraya Een Hajji, the brand manager for Roll20. So we're going to be here talking until 2:30. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by giving you an update on things that have recently come out with Roll20 and things that are currently going on. Then we're going to give you a preview of things that are coming up. And after that, we'll throw it open for a Q&A. So hang on to your questions until that Q&A section begins. And with that, we'll start talking about some stuff that Roll20 has been up to lately. Now, I know that Nolan, you wanted to talk specifically about some of the things that are going on with in the mobile world.
Yeah, so there's two things that, so first off, it's been a second, and I'm sorry that we're running slightly behind on this. Our hope was to actually get this out the door in mid-October and didn't. I will say we just hired somebody new in the Twitch realms that I think is going to be helping us out in terms of having more regular content like this and doing so many things. But there were two things that we wanted to jump out of the gate and talk about today in terms of current, very current issues that have some impending solutions in how we're looking at them. First off, the mobile application. Right now, if you are using the mobile application, which is the downloaded app on iPad, it breaks if you're using a character sheet that uses the Charactermancer, which a whole lot of very important games on Roll20 utilize that. And so that's obviously not ideal. We've actually debated just taking down the application in the meantime, but we've held off from doing that because there are so many games that don't use the Charactermancer, and that's the sort of thing I hate to, an example, Edge of the Empire dice rolling and things like that. I know people are doing that using the application. I don't want to put folks in a place where, well, we took it down even though it's not broken for you. We did sit down with a contractor and do some consult on that. We've actually submitted a fix to Apple. The problem is that we don't know if it's going to be accepted. And the reason that we're sitting in this bind is that we use a service called Trigger.io. The best way I can put it, and excuse me, the non-coder trying to explain this nonsense, I can see my cohort's eyes going, what? Essentially, it projects a version of what we have as the web app and fakes it. So we don't have a fully native iPad application. So there's kind of two-step solution to this. One, we want to get to the point that we have a fully native iPad application because that's the direction that Apple is moving, that they no longer want these sorts of projected applications. But first, we want to have what we're doing working again. So we're trying right now, like I said, we're working with a contractor and doing a few things to try to get that moving. We'll see what happens there. But we're also going to, you can expect as soon as maybe middle of next week before we get to Thanksgiving. Uh-oh, did I just bum out? Did my internet just go? Everything froze.
Yeah, keep going. We can hear you. Uh-oh, I think we may have lost Nolan's internet. So, well, we'll come back to that. But since while we're fixing Nolan's internet, let's go ahead and Dean, can you talk to us about, we just had a new release coming out for Wizards of the Coast. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, we had two big releases from Wizards of the Coast, which the production team was super excited about working on both at the same time. So yeah, Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, the Magic the Gathering crossover-ish. I don't know if I can technically say crossover-ish into the D&D realm just came out on Roll20. That is an entire compendium to bring the world of Ravnica to Dungeons & Dragons. It has support for the Charactermancer with the new races, new classes, and some subclasses. It has just a whole, I don't know, you see the product description, a whole wealth of information to get you started in this world, along with a little adventure to kind of introduce you and your players to getting used to the elements in that world. And then the other one was the second Waterdeep release, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, that I believe is the biggest dungeon that we've released on Roll20 for a Wizards product or in general. That has, it's I think 26 maps that are absolutely enormous. In watching the production team trying to figure out how to light and make functional some of these maps, especially with multiple layers of like some maps have kind of tunnels that go over and under and all this stuff, was a super stressful to watch, but I didn't have to watch it that much, luckily. Process. So yeah, it is this massive undertaking that I think came out really, really well on Roll20. And because those maps are so big and in depth, we'll be doing some more with them, I think, in the next week or so. We're hoping to release a small, just the map pack separately for those who are interested in it. I can go into more on WotC or...
No, that's a lot of great WotC stuff that I'm personally really excited about, everything that the production team has done to make those maps unique. But I'd also love to hear, I mean, we've done a lot of other stuff with Paizo, and I know that folks are just getting used to us having Paizo products on Roll20, but we're super excited that they're there. So can you give us a refresher on what's been added over the last 2-ish months?
Sure. Well, everyone I'm sure knows we already have the Pathfinder official character sheet, which is a very lightweight and lean sheet that has a ton of options, but not too many options in the sense of trying to keep it lean. We have the Pathfinder Bestiary out now that supports that, and that's a product that I was excited for because just getting more bestiaries on the Roll20 system overall makes so many players' lives easier, and I think that's kind of one of the best bangs for the buck on Roll20 of being able to quickly pull encounters onto the table. On the Starfinder front, we've released the sheet. We're doing updates. We're having some product lined up. We're not ready to release just yet, but we will be soon. So on the Pathfinder and Starfinder fronts, we're been rolling out slowly. We're ramping up into what I hope is a quick and healthy release schedule. It takes a little bit to get all of the development and technical and just planning aspects in place to work together to be at a place where we can keep churning along. And we're mostly at a place where we can start to churn out product.
Yeah. And we'll talk, I think, about some of that when we get to the future stuff section.
Cool.
But those of you who were around about half an hour ago, we were streaming the Pathfinder playtest with GM Adam Coble. And really happy to have that on Roll20. It's been really cool to see the various goblins go through the campaign. And if anyone, by the way, hasn't checked it out, the VODs of that on YouTube, especially of Adam setting up the maps, because you can get the maps for free. Adam setting up the maps is a really great tool. He drops a lot of his, GM tips that he's learned over however long he's been using Roll20, and he's very good with the program. So it's a good way to learn tricks about the interface, and I highly recommend checking out the VOD of the Pathfinder playtest, which is up on YouTube if you want to go find it. And on the development front, we've been up to a lot of quality of life improvements. So Kenton, can you walk us through some of the stuff that's come out recently on the dev side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. We released the measured update after the Character Mancer, which worked a lot on the virtual tabletop to make sure that rulers and paths and the different aspects the GMs need to set up every campaign and every adventure, and also make sure that combat and interaction happens right. We were able to fix a lot of the different bugs and zooming and just basically making it work a whole lot better. In the beginning of October, we actually got to take part in a fun thing in the open source software development community called Hacktoberfest, which if you're not familiar with it or with the term hackathon, basically we, as a development team, each got a week that we could work on whatever we wanted to. And so that means that a lot of the developers who are, in fact, power users and enthusiasts of Roll20, and that's how we ended all up working here anyway, got to work on the things that we really wanted to work on. So some of the things you've seen come out, which include the quick dice, added to the player menu, so you can just hover and then roll a grid of dice, however many you need, up to D100s, I think, and also duplicating handouts. The duplicating handouts had been a suggestion on a suggestion forum that had been really popular, and we were thrilled to be able to let that get that work done and release those votes. For sure. The other thing that we were really excited that came out of Hacktoberfest was the pickup game system. So now if you go to join game, you'll be able to search just like you had before and see all the listings for games and GMs or parties looking for GM or GMs looking for party. And if there's a game coming up in 2 hours and the game owner is open to it and they've selected show up in the pickup game system, you can actually just join that game, just like walking up to a basketball court in a park with a basketball and joining. Not that I've ever done that before, but it's fun. Also, like at a con, to walk up to a table and start playing with people you've never met before and make new friends. That's how a lot of people in our community end up meeting and building those connections. And so we're happy to extend that into the virtual world as well. Yeah, and that's a lot of what we've had going on in the development world that we've released up to this point.
Well, we'll get to talk about the stuff that you haven't released, but we can finally talk about here. And by the way, I'm looking at chat. Thanks all of you for your enthusiasm for the late updates, or the recent updates, excuse me. But yeah, it's been really cool. I know I introduced my current group that I'm DMing to the measured update, like to the ruler tool, and they've been just like unstoppably measuring everything ever since, which is great. It's fun. They also draw pictures on the tabletop now with this tool, which is not what it's intended for, but what are players if not people who generate things that you didn't expect them to generate?
Quite resourceful. That's what your players are.
They're so resourceful. I'll tell them that. But yeah, we have a lot coming up. So now we get to talk about what's coming in the near future. Everything that we're about to talk about is being worked on, but it is not out yet. If you want to follow these updates as they come, I would recommend following the Roll20 blog, which hopefully we can put in chat. Thanks, Alex, for putting the YouTube links up in there earlier. But with that, let's, Kenton, why don't I just hand it back to you and you can talk about all the stuff that your team is working on that hopefully we can now actually talk about and that we can share with these folks.
Yeah, so a couple of things, as Nolan mentioned, we are aware of the iPad issues and we're working on a solution towards that as a fix, and then we have big plans for that. Another thing that we know needs to happen is the jukebox and our integration with Fanburst, and there's been some issues with that, and we're really excited to perhaps be launching self-hosted audio here in before the end of the year is our goal. So you'll actually be able to upload your own tracks and audio files to Roll20 and use the jukebox interface to play with those. And then
a quick note about that. We'll talk
Sure.
about that a little when Nolan gets back as well. He's having, as you've noticed, some internet issues, but he is seeking a new connection. So we will have Nolan back here, and I just don't want to make anyone think he disappeared. But sorry, Kenton, keep going.
So Kenton, you were talking about Roll20 having its own record label, I think is what I heard.
No, that's in fact, well, I mean, hey, you're a resourceful, Dean. Maybe we can pull it together.
Yeah.
The other things that we've got coming up are an improved virtual tabletop performance, especially for GMs when it comes to advanced fog of war. We've actually completely rewritten the calculations for determining which cells and everything, and I'm kind of getting into the weeds on the technical details, but that's what I love. So we're actually expecting about 150 to 200% increase in performance for GMs with advanced fog of war turned on. We're also going to have in the Charactermancer realm leveling as part of the opportunity. D&D 5th edition leveling is in the works right now, and it will be really a great experience. Like I'm very excited about it because it opens up a whole other world to what can be done with the virtual tabletop as a whole and players. And I know that it's something that everyone has been clamoring for since the Charactermancer came out those few short months ago. Additionally, and this is something I'm pretty excited about too, animated images, GIFs on the virtual tabletop. So tokens and elements on the map will actually be able to be animated and really get that immersion on the VTT up significantly. Dean, that made me think the integration between the leveler, you might have something to talk about there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of integrations between everything you talked about, mostly on the sense that a lot of the products that, like, as far as leveling with Charactermancer, there's products that are tied to that, such as Player's Handbook updates that we can look at, the whole question of every other day of every other year when is Xanathar's coming is tied to that. So it's one of those moments of Xanathar's is still coming soon. It's not my fault. It's Kenton's. Right? Okay to say that then? But no, so we don't want to release some of these products until we're able to functionally support them in the way that makes sense for the VTT. And we've been saying that about Xanathars and certain things for a while. So once Charactermancer leveling works, these blocks are kind of cleared up on our end and we'll be moving very, very quickly along. As far as the animated, you keep saying GIFs, but it's GIFs, right? Is this
no? We can,
what peanut butter? What are you talking? What kind of peanut butter?
Okay, it's
Come
fine.
at me, bro.
I think this group is 50-50 on GIF versus GIF, and I'm willing to have this devolve into some sort of how do you do a fist fight over the internet?
Alex, who is mastering this thing behind the scenes and who we can see and no one else can, says GIF, and so I'm going with the producer on this.
That does tilt the statistics, and I don't like it.
We can get more.
So anyways, so I've been saying GIF a lot because we are with being able to support animated GIFs on the tabletop. That opens up an entire new market for what can be sold on the marketplace. Because what good is something if you can't buy it? And so I've been working with the creator community already to give them some advance warning about this feature coming, and they're all super excited. And I've been seeing some fun experiments happening there, and a lot of questions being asked of, wait, maybe we could do things this way or this way or this way. What can we do with GIFs overall? And seeing all of their ideas starting to blossom and form makes me really excited about that feature overall. And I'm really excited to watch them try to break that feature too, as soon as it comes out, and force us to expand it in its own way.
That is, and I think it is worth mentioning the timeline right now on the and I'm going to GIF support. We're looking at the first week of December having something up on dev. We don't know how performant it's going to be in the first iteration. So it's going to be a little bit of trial and error there. Please be patient with us, but those who are looking to test that, we should have a version of that here pretty soon. We should be able to go and fiddle with that on the development server for those of you who are pro users. So we'll see how.
Yeah, like I'm quite sure it'll be fine when people are like, I want to have an animated character that slices a sword, but then I'm sure we're going to see some use scenarios of everything's on fire. It's a GeoCities website on Roll20.
I'm putting an entire movie into, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Like also, as far as, it's not something that Kenton discussed as far as technologically and dev end, but it's something that's been going on overall with Roll20 is I've been trying to really find a way to continue to break out what is possible for third parties and independent publishers. A very long goal, which I have been chipping away at slowly, like with a fingernail against a mountain, is being able to open up compendiums for third parties. So far, people who are familiar with the Roll20 marketplace know that all the compendium products besides one have been internally produced by Roll20 because it is complicated. There's a lot of parts that need to feed into other parts that need to feed into other parts that need to loop back around and keep changing. And so Kobold Press has started making headway with us on releasing third-party compendiums, doing it themselves. It's been great working with them because they've been willing to throw resources and time and sanity at helping us break these doors open to understand what publishers need and what walls are there to be run into and broken down. We're coming very close to having a presentable thing that I can give to third-party publishers, being like, hey, do you want your system on our platform? Here's a way to deeply integrate. And yes, it's work, but it makes sense. And you're not going to, like, we can give you a clear path for that instead of being like, well, wait, maybe next year. So 2019, I think, is going, for me, is a big year on really trying to lay some really good foundation to really increase what we can do with third parties. I don't expect third parties to be rushing in, but we already have enough who are like really hoping for updates and working with already to get a foundation, hit some more walls, figure out ways to make this even easier, and then really make Roll20 a place where everyone can show their games off and sell their games or test their games or put their games however they want. So those are some very big macro level plans, but we're making pretty significant progress on that over the next quarter.
To tie into and build off of that too, that was one of the big goals with the whole Burn Bright project, has been to find some of those areas where we, like, by forcing ourselves to integrate as a publisher with ourselves, it helps us find some of those weak spots where we really do need to buckle down and you know, help, instead of like, oh, we'll figure it out in terms of how we get this information to transfer. No, really getting a format locked down that we can pass over to somebody who's not programming with us and have it transfer in easily for things like a compendium. So we're getting better at it. It's just it definitely continues as a work in process.
Yeah, and with that, like overall, we're just, I think, learning how to be better as a marketplace. And this is something that you and I have talked a lot about, Nolan, since me coming on, of like, where Roll20 is a great service, and then I go, we're a great service, we're kind of a marketplace as far as the tools we give publishers. And so
things sell, but we can make it easier for them to sell. Make it
yes.
What's selling? Make it. There's a whole host of things that there's movement that is still needed. That was something going all the way back to for those who are longtime folks in the RPG community. Steve Wright was one of the first people who was using our service, if people recall, Wright Publishing. And he was always, pushing in terms of those realms of like, I'm able to do this over here. Why can't I do that here? And we've added a lot of those things, but there's still 100 more to do. And so, really, a lot of what we did in terms of trying to bring on our own game and do that is to kind of force the issue with ourselves, so that we can become more third-party compliant. But
which seems to me as good a time as any. To speaking of bringing on our own game, Nolan, there's some Burn Bright news that I'm sure we'd like to talk about, and also we can go back to mobile after that.
So Burn Bright, actually next week we've got a date on that. Monday, November 19th. So we just started a new live stream of Burn Bright, and it's a pretty fun cast. Running that on Mondays, and alongside that, this Monday, our plan is to expand out the test of the game to plus users as well as pro users. So pro users already have access to the beta box essentially, and we're going to roll that out to additional people to get some more feedback. So entering a new mode of testing, opening the floodgates to hear a little bit more about what people do and don't like, so that we can make decisions and improve on that. And there's been a lot in terms of the feedback that we've gotten thus far on it. There's some things that we're doing art-wise that are going to change, and things in those in other realms as well. But it's a really fun system. I'm really proud of how that team put it together, and I don't know. I'm very excited about that. I think that's something that's really cool and really unique, and I'm really glad that we've gotten the opportunity to let that play out. So we'll see what happens as we let more Plus people use that. So if you're a Plus subscriber and you're sitting out there and have seen other people fiddling with this, please come play it, come test it, and come tell us things about it, so that we can, make as good a version of this game will we roll it out beyond that next. I guess to jump then back around, I've changed location. I drove a mile away. Cox, for some reason, was testing my internet this morning. They said it was all going to be done by this afternoon, and they lied, because it was the exact same error and crash just now. But
that'll teach you to trust an ISP on anything.
Yeah, but after a frantic 1 mile drive, thank you, brother. I am now back in front of a computer. Mobile, as I was talking about, iPad application, we know it's broken. We're embarrassed that it's broken, and are trying to get a fix. Again, it's basically that Apple has changed the ways in which we're allowed to do what we'd previously been doing, which is doing essentially a non-native version of, we didn't build a iPad application from the ground up. And so we're using a service called Trigger to project essentially Roll20 into the iPad space. The rules on some of that have changed. We're trying to figure out a Bandage version. The thing that goes beyond the Bandage version, again, we've got a version that we're contractor finished up some work yesterday, and we're in submission with Apple, and we'll see whether or not they take it. That's a really sticky process. If any of you out there are developers and have fiddled with that previously. But in any case, our plan is to try to have hired into the new year somebody's probably to build native application and to kind of expand our mobile offering overall. Job postings on that could be up as soon as next week. We're still internally going back and forth on some of the language and exactly how we're going to present that. A possibility, maybe even a probability on, is that we would love for, so Roll20 is remote. We're all over creation, but there is a small contingent of us in the Las Vegas Valley area, and we think that we would like the mobile team to be based here, with the reason being that we recognize that a large part of the population who uses the mobile applications, oddly enough, isn't using them to be mobile. They're using them to be at a table, a physical table with others instead of a second screen. And so we kind of want to test that out in a room and be playing with things in that realm. But that's all future planning. Right now, the most immediate thing is we are trying to get a version of that that's up and running. Again, we haven't taken down the application completely for download because it is working for non-character mancer games. Yeah, it's fun keeping up with other people's terms of use. So we're making a go at it. We'll see what we can get you, and we'll try to keep you looped in on that. In a similar realm, and I think this was talked about slightly outside of me, that Kenton talked some about.
Yeah, I stole your thunder for sure.
Okay. I don't know how the degree to which this is covered. There's one, this is some different legal work in terms of figuring out this. That's been one of the reasons that we've been hesitant to do it for a while. That's going well. The other thing is that there is going to be some.
This being music. We switched
Jukebox.
Without saying that we had switched. Sorry, yes, jukebox.
Kenton already talked about this mysterious thing that I'm not going to talk about, and we're not going to tell you what that thing is. And
Kenton pretty much told us that we're looking into options for uploading.
So yeah, and trying to do that in a way that's as legal as possible, and gives creators the protections that they deserve, and that sort of thing. I think the thing to soft mention here, and I need you to don't overclip this. all of this, hear all of me. We are, because file sizes on this sort of thing are different, this may change some storage things. And so we are looking at subscription price increases in the future. The thing about that we want to be certain on is that the plan would be that that is forward facing to new subscribers. We would, for at least a year, probably two, look at locking in anybody who's currently subscribed. If we make a change there, we're still running the numbers on that and trying to figure out what does and doesn't work there. But that has been a project that we've been working on ever since. Yeah.
So status on that is we're looking at it. If there is a price increase, it will affect people who are starting new.
First-time subscribers.
Right. But if you're already subscribed, you keep your price.
You would be staying at, but we want to,
for a while.
This to be sustainable, right?
Yes.
We want this to be something that we can move into, and that we can have this additional storage space and do these things. And for those who aren't aware, the reason that we're really pushing on this, as opposed to, this is something I thought we would be hitting probably more in like a year or two, as far as the audio uploads and circling back around to it. Fanburst, the company that we've been utilizing to do this, has kind of started running silent, that they're not updating any feed. They're not, both us and users have been contacting them, trying to figure out what's going on with some site throttling that's been happening, and aren't hearing anything back. And so the only assumption we can make is, as internally we've joked about, is that the company is running on grandma's credit card. We don't know how long that line of credit is. So we want something here and in place and working before we run into the iceberg of grandma's credit card, which Fanburst may or may not be running on. We don't know. They won't answer the emails. But we're very hopeful to have something before end of year that makes a pretty significant change here, in terms of, because it was a terrible, awful process in terms of switching from SoundCloud to Fanburst when SoundCloud changed their API rules. Switching from Fanburst to another third-party service sounds like no. So we really want to try to get this done internally this time, so that it's done and it's our problem forever, as opposed to somebody else who we have no control over. So keep your fingers crossed on that, and we hope to have more news on that soon. But we do recognize
when you say grandma's credit card, I just picture a credit card made of cat food.
I don't think that's how that works. I don't know.
Okay.
But this is definitely not ideal, and it's the sort of thing that it drives all of us a little. And so, know that we are concerned about it, working on it, and have a solution that's on the way. So that's our hang in there on those two, both the iPad application and the jukebox are things that we consider in emergency mode, and are trying to get the emergency fixes out.
Right. And, it's never fun to be in those situations, but we do want you all to be aware that we are actively working on it, and we're aware of it. So as far as mobile goes, we'll be looking to hire some developers, as well as put out some interim fixes until we can get it resolved. We're looking at self-uploads for expanding the jukebox, and we've been up to a lot on the code side. I mean, thank you everyone again for your kind words about the pickup group system, the quick dice and the measured update. It's great to hear that you're enjoying those. We're also looking forward to improving the VTT performance overall, and adding leveling to the character mancer, and adding gifts on the tabletop, which I know that everyone's been really excited for.
And I will say something that Kenton and I were talking about before this was just an overall. I do feel really good in terms of the way that we've approached this year with the development team, as far as I think our standards and practices are continuing to get better, and the amount of what we can do is continuing to get better. I know it's been kind of a slow process in terms of how fast turnarounds on updates have been, but our behind the scenes, like, our code base is cleaner and has better documentation, and we're inching ever closer to a point where we've got more people on staff who can tackle more issues. And we are, we have knocked out a lot of suggestions on the suggestions forum this year, and we know that there's a lot more to get to. and that maintains as something that is a very real part of the day-to-day behind the scenes, is looking at that and trying to figure out, this isn't a huge thing. This is a quality of life change. What's it going to take for us to jump and knock out more of these down the road? Honestly, the biggest success in that this year was a measured update, where we took something that was a borderline a bug fix and went and were able to make more than a dozen suggestions on the suggestions forum get knocked out as we went back and played with that. And I really do think that our capacity to do that is going to grow.
Yeah, it's been really fun watching the teams really get their gears in motion and seeing how fast people are getting through assignments these days. It's been really fun. So we're looking forward to showing you more of that. The other thing to look forward to, of course, we've got a lot of new products like Dean talked about. Yes, Sanathars is coming down the pipeline soon, along with that Character Mancer leveling process. And we've got more stuff coming out for a whole bunch of partners, looking at adding some compendium supports that other publishers can get on Roll20 in a really integrated way. And our internal game, Burn Bright, is in its beta test. So we are on Monday going to expand that to all Plus subscribers. So if you're a Plus subscriber and you want to pick up a sci-fi game, maybe on this coming Monday, you can pick up Burn Bright. The first module is called Burning Daylight. You can even start a pickup group for it, maybe. Find some like-minded individuals. With that said, we are now going to switch over to the Q&A section. As a reminder, we're going to be here until 2:30. Stream's going to end then, but we will be taking your questions until then, so hit us up with questions. One of the ones that I saw from the beginning of this conversation, I saw Protobabe was asking, hey there, I'm wondering if you guys will implement a possible wish list for marketplace items, especially for DMs like me, which seems like something that Dean, you might have some thoughts on.
I have lots of thoughts. Yeah, we very much want to do that. We have priority lists. It's up there in mine, but I don't have a date for that. But that is something that we've wanted to do for a while. The marketplace did have its kind of like mostly upgrade this past, I guess, almost a year ago, a little less than a year ago, I think. And we've been wanting to do kind of like our 1.5 pass, and with any luck that we caught up in that. There's more internal discussion that needs to happen on exactly what we're prioritizing first. There's some major fixes we need to put in first as far as marketplace search and whatnot. But yes, we want it very badly. Not sure if that helps beyond that.
Well, if it gets onto the plans, then we'll have it, like I said earlier, follow the blog, we'll get updates there, and we'll do more of these. We're trying to do these more often, but right now we're hitting about every 3 months we do one of these. So we'll keep you updated. Laurel 7x3 asks, are there any plans for making subscriptions more diverse, such as lifetime subs or only subs for dynamic lighting, even a modular self-chosen submodel, and if not, why? Nolan, do you want to tackle that?
Yeah, so this is one of those things, and this is, I hate when I've got to live in this sort of corporate land, but this is one of those simple realities. The human brain shorts out somewhere around 3 choices in terms of any sort of purchasing, and so we're sitting here with free, plus, and pro, and trying to branch off of that gets to a point where people in the large group can't make a decision, and then nobody signs up for anything, and then we can't keep the lights on, and then we don't get to keep making Roll20, and everything is awful. And that's the simplest, suckiest answer in terms of the question, is that I would love to get to a point where we could be where we could make it a little bit more a la carte, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. I think what we will instead be focused on is more adding things to the subscription levels that make sense and that make it a more robust offering, to make certain that, particularly in a world where I was just talking about the potential of a future forward price increase, that it's worth it, and that we have something there that really functions at the level that you're subscribed at, and we think is a good price offering. But nothing right now that's an a la carte, dynamic lighting only style option or anything like that in the future. I think the plan is more along the lines of make certain that each subscription tier has some things that make it stand out and give a good value and a reason to do it. So
yeah. As someone who had to guide her parents through, they wanted to buy my brother an Xbox 360. This is a long time ago, but like the number of SKUs that were out there absolutely just crossed their eyes and boggled their minds. So I personally appreciate keeping things simple. Not that everyone who uses Roll20 is my parents, but my parents might one day.
I can't decide between 3 things for dinner, so.
Yeah, there you go. There's a discussion happening now in chat, and I want to make sure that we're a part of it. Jalela brought up a question about the maps in Roll20, and specifically this is in relation to the recent Dragon Heist and Dungeon and the Mad Mage maps. So they say that they are very unhappy about the quality of the maps, meaning the black and white maps in both of those 2 adventures. Are there problems getting Mike Schley to work on this style, or is this style really intended? There's also a question about ratios, Dean, and I don't know how much you are familiar with that, but is there anything you want to dig into there?
Yeah, I mean, so we've been hearing, a certain amount of feedback about the maps. The reality is, I'm the wrong person to come to. It's like we are a licensor or a licensee of a licensor, and those are the maps Wizard makes. So those are the maps we use. I know there was some talk of being like, well, why can't you just make new maps? Commissioning all brand new, 30 brand new gigantic maps, getting those approved, getting those to the quality that we want. It's like, this is a stylistic preference, and I understand not everyone's going to be happy with it. I do take all the feedback that comes my way that is related to one of our licensed partners, and I give that to them. I do very much think, though, if you want to have a deeper conversation about style, that going directly to whoever is across any product, whether it's Wizards or someone else, going to them because they can engage with you. I can't engage with you on this. It's not,
I do think one thing, Dean, that I think you're selling short in terms of a thing that we have done is that we are on that particular deal, we do have an obligation to tell our partner when somebody has a complaint, and that is an obligation we take seriously. And so do know that if you are saying something on our forums or on our Facebook and that sort of thing, asking about those maps, we are passing that feedback along.
Yeah, we pass it along. And I mean, in this case, like I understand why some people aren't into it, but is a stylistic preference. Like personally, I think they're kind of cool. And we did do some treatment to them. And like the most that I'm taking from this at this point, as far as action items, I try to think as far as like, okay, here's feedback. What can I do about it? As far as action items, I'm going to be adding an additional step when we review and break apart every product when we get it. And it's, there's this big production kind of churn on that. Looking to see if there's ways that we can better marry styles between different products from any publisher. If there is some kind of, okay, this product looks a bit different, but we have this bestiary or this already. Are there little things that we can work on to help with the flourishes? That's, I think, a great point that has been brought up in the forums, and it's a great point that I'm internalizing. But if you don't like the maps, I don't know. They're great. They're huge. They're amazing and functional, and the lighting really does keep them creepy and cool as you play through them. But there is kind of a limit, and I don't mean to shut down conversation, but it's what it is.
There's only so much that we can do, but we are doing that thing. I think it's probably if you'll give yourself enough credit on this, Dean. I know it's tough to get your hands tied in it, but we're passing that feedback along, and
yeah. I think you're muted.
I am. I have unmuted. All right. So I want to give Kenton a chance to pitch in. We just got a great question from Sophisticated. How is performance tweaking coming along in regards to dynamic lighting, and what kind of targets are you hoping for?
So that is one of the things that I mentioned in near future updates, is an update to the virtual tabletop canvas and how all the dynamic lighting is rendered and how that's calculated. We do run into some limits with the browser, right? But we're making strides in every technology that exists today. Like currently today, there are multiple devs working on utilizing the technology that ends up on your computer to the best of its ability. Targets are a little bit hard to do, but like I said, we have a 200, 150 to 200% increase in the virtual tabletop performance, and that actually is for like a minimal virtual tabletop with just a few tokens and things on there. When you add more, it actually gets better. Right now, when you add more tokens, it really bogs down the virtual tabletop, and we've done the most to alleviate that pain and make that rendering a whole lot better. So 200% is what we're hoping to hit. Between 150% and 200% is the target.
That would be awesome. I super hope we get there. We have some follow-up questions from, I'm going to pronounce it TLC. With potential subscription price changing, what happens to people who don't use the current storage capacity, and is there consideration to doing add-on storage to the current subs model?
We're looking at a bunch of different storage options and trying to figure out what the future of that is. I don't have a good public answer to that yet, because we don't have a good internal answer to that yet. But a lot of meetings with open Excel sheets trying to figure out how we make this a thing that scales and makes sense, and you get space to upload things at a reasonable amount, and we don't spend all of the development money on the storing of the things. Nothing to report back on that, but we're working on it, and it's something that we're also talking to. We actually utilize both Google and Amazon storage in different parts of what we do on the tabletop. So relationships exist in both those places, and just trying to figure out what the right things to do for the community are. I saw somebody else in chat inquiring along those same lines about the idea of, like, is this going to totally price out free folks? A free model on Roll20 is something that we think is pretty important, and there will be a methodology of that. It's just a question as to what that space looks like and what we're able to do. So yeah.
Cool. And then so hopefully that helps. And there's probably another question here for maybe Kenton. So Solution is looking to run 2 opposing groups on the same map, like think competitive role-play combat. And are there any additions coming to token line of sight to allow for 2 groups to only see each other if line of sight would allow it?
That is a very interesting idea. At this point, we don't have any plans for that specifically. There are some different line of sight areas in the suggestions forum that we're looking at, and the virtual tabletop, advanced fog of war, the fog of war, all those different features are things that we're enhancing and that we want to continue to enhance. So that specific use case we may not have yet, but I'd say head on over to the suggestion forum and spend some votes on that.
Cool. That will actually tie in nicely with the next question that I wanted to bring up from Little Rue. While I understand the reasoning why certain bug threads are amalgamated, I often find that issues posted there are unaddressed by the Roll20 staff. They may be seen, but it's often days before a response is given. Are there any plans to include more staff who can provide more frequent updates to these mega threads? Nolan, I think you might have some insight on that one.
So this is something that, first off, we're, I guess, as of, I think literally today, we were joined by our 21st employee, which is pretty cool. But there continues to be, I think, scale issues in terms of how essentially moderation staff function for incoming tickets, and then better funneling of those tickets to get an answer from members of the coding team. And that's something that's been an issue as we've grown so exponentially, and it's hard to get that right. So there's actually two things that are happening right now that I think are going to change this. And I'm going to give you the peek behind the curtain and what's happening. And my promise to you, or my ask to you, is the understanding of like, I know that at the end of the day, none of this matters until what's in front of the curtain works the right way. So don't take any of this as an excuse. Right now, behind the curtain, the two things that we're looking at and working on are, one, we're changing our service ticket model to use Atlassian and Jira, their service ticket desk. We just set up a whole bunch of things there that are going to go live here pretty darn soon, before end of the month. That will change how you're able to essentially give us bugs and how we codify them and get them moved over. So that this is a pretty big change. We've done some pretty big work on this. Dresspar on our team has done a huge amount of work on getting this done, and I'm really excited to see this rolled out to people, because I do think it's going to help get the triage faster and make certain too things don't get lost in a shuffle as easily. The other thing that we're working on is actually getting some additional contracted folks to help with us in these realms that can be scaled up and down as is necessary with kind of the ebb and flow of play times. So on that, we've got a proposal in front of us to do some of that. It's not going to be outsourced across the world to somebody who doesn't, who English isn't their first language, and we're not paying anything. We're doing something that I think is a really good solution. And once I've got a deal signed there, the intention is to talk about that and let people know what we're doing with it. But I think that that's going to help collect everything into that new funnel and get everything moved in a faster method. But we've got too many things to sit for too long there. And I mean, even the things I was talking about at the front of the hour in terms of the jukebox and the iPad.
Nolan, I'm going to step in.
Yeah.
Because we have 8 minutes left and a lot of questions. But I appreciate the look behind the scenes. So hopefully the thing y'all take away from that is
there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. We're exploring some different systems. We're definitely trying to scale that up. And so I see all these questions. I'm going to run through some and trying to get everything real quick. If I've missed a question, like I'll try to get to it before we go. But Sophisticated asked, I utilize Roll20 IRL in multiple games a week, both at stores and in home. I'm hoping for a feature where players can use their mobile devices to access their character sheets with touch access in mind. So I'm just going to walk us quickly through that, because we did touch on it when we were going through what mobile is going to do. But we're going to bring on some developers who specialize in mobile, and with the idea that what people are doing is specifically using the mobile app to manage their character sheets, usually in person around a table. So we will be redesigning with that in mind. What form that's going to take, I don't know, but we'll be hiring for that very, very soon, and there will be changes in that realm. Then Mimbrel asks, could you address any upcoming changes to fix the problems with the integrated voice video chat system?
So actually,
oh, sorry, that was Fenord, and I see you have another question, Fenord. We'll start there. Can I throw Kenton on it?
Yep.
Okay, Kenton, go for it.
Yeah, another thing we're actively working on, both on the technology we use now and then in additional technologies. I can say that the WebRTC is something that we have on at least dev server right now. We have a different test that's running. It's kind of in the background, but just to make it better. And then we have some other solutions that we're working towards with a no firm deadline on that yet.
Okay, cool. And then let's go ahead and address Fenord's other question on this subject. Could Nolan please address how criticism is received on Roll20's forums?
So, I mean, there's a lot of things there to discuss. I think let's back that up to I think kind of an overall for those who aren't aware. What happened on Reddit earlier this year in terms of the misunderstandings there. I think that, one, we've made some pretty significant changes in how we're approaching that, and I'd like to talk about that. From, I guess, where I sit standpoint-wise on the criticisms and how we deal with them, Reddit is a different thing from what we do internally. And I think in that regard, Richard Riley and I were Redditors. We're people who've been on, and I've been a 10-year user of that platform. And we treated our subreddit as an extension of our community. And the response we got earlier this year is that that is not the case. It's very much its own platform with its own reticate. And so we made the decision to hand over the moderation responsibilities there to a new team from the Looking for Group subreddit. They've done a really good job, and we don't have any influence on their direction or what they're doing there. But we appreciate that they've kept that community intact. But it is outside of us. Inside of us, those particularly who are on the pro forums are aware that we did reshape our code of conduct and did a pretty deep dive on that with a back and forth. And I think there's a couple angles to that. One, it's like it's very important to have a code of conduct, and it's something that matters to us, and we care about having rules. At the same time, though, we need those rules to be clear. So to get the best response of like both everybody being welcome at the table and to have values of acceptance and respect be shared by people, we need there to be rules. So there was a revision of the code of conduct that we launched end of last month. Some of the things that are involved in it are giving better clarity to how a suspension differs from a ban and the steps that lead to that. I think at the end of the day, and we're really grateful when we get community feedback, concerns, critiques. We operate from an idea of like that sort of thing is a present, that it gives us the ability to change and to work on things. The community has grown a lot, and I think it's difficult it's a challenge to keep up with what that growth looks like and to make certain that the experience stays amazing for people. But in overall, we want feedback, and criticism is a format of feedback that we want. I think it's just ensuring that it's happening in a civil manner and a manner that allows for, that doesn't bind our ability to react to it. That doesn't bind our ability to talk to it because it's adversarial. And I think that the new changes to the code of conduct are helpful to that. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I also think too on that, it's funny because internally as a company, we are like big on criticism. Like we are the first, like all the conversations we all have, this is broken, this sucks, wow, this is messed up.
If you've watched the last hour. Yeah.
but even like, we're being kind and a little bit front facing even on that, like our conversations get pretty gritty on far as like, and so, seeing people's concerns about, is Roll20 open to criticism? For some, I often have that moment of, wait, huh? Because internally it's very open, and maybe that's not being expressed or hasn't been at points expressed properly through interactions, and that's fair and valid. I think when it comes to forums specifically, there is a definite line between what's useful criticism and what's not, especially too, like relating to the question before of staff responding.
Right.
When staff's like, in our day, which is busy, we're a small business, it's busy as hell. To have to going in and being like, okay, this is useful. And if there's toxicity that like starts to just seep in, it messes mind states and messes up everything. And so having that clear line of like, okay, well, this is useful feedback, we can talk with you and get information versus what is not. It needs to be clear. And
I think that we're reaching a point where more and more developers aren't able to do things like this. They aren't able to have conversations with their community. They aren't able to have forums with their communities because communities become infiltrated by a loud group of folks who come in and kind of take over the conversation and disallow it from moving forward. And that's something that we've got to continue to work on, trying to maintain the community that we've built together and be able to talk and be able to, from where I sit in Roll20 and having been here since the beginning of this ride, we want to be as responsive as we can be and get issues moved, but the platform continues to get bigger.
Yeah. And we're pretty much at the end. Excuse me, we're pretty much at the end of our time. But I mentioned Mimbrel's name earlier, and so I want to make sure that, out of fairness, we do answer their question, and they had a very good one. So Mimbrel wanted to know, is there any projection on when another map layer may be introduced?
Yeah, so I'm going to jump in on this one and say that another map layer is a lot of times asked for weather and things like that. And what fun would weather be without animations? So is that a good as answer as any? I don't know.
I think that's a pretty good hint.
Oh no.
Hint, 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 hint. Okay. All right. So now we are at 2:30, and we've dropped some hints. We've dropped some info. Thank you all once again for coming. We appreciate it very much. Hopefully we answered your questions today, and we will be doing this again in the future. So if we didn't, come back next time and keep talking to us on the forums. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.